Let's go through all the books that I read in July. 6 books in total, 2 digital ARCs, 2 audiobooks, and 2 hard copies. There were a couple of brilliant books in there and others that happened. July's reading wrap-up. Let's do it. Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Sinead. This is my spooky corner of YouTube, where I review mostly spooky books and talk about mostly spooky films, and also bring you slices of the spooky things that I get up to day to day. It's not always spooky. Sometimes I'm just staring at a wall, but sometimes things come out of the wall, so it works. Stay hydrated with caffeine. It is now August, which means it's time for me to recap everything I read in July. And it was a mixed bag of a month. Now, let me be clear, all of the books that I read were decent. In fact, 2 of them were brilliant and well worth your time. The others are equally worth your time, but I just felt left wanting more. I wanted more out of the month. The books that I had, I was kind of excited for, and I really just ended up going, it's okay. There was about a 10-day period in July where I didn't read at all, and I normally read every day. I'll sneak a few pages in at least before I go to bed, or at some point in the afternoon I'll be able to stop and read. But I was so busy in July because I was doing a local amateur dramatic show. I was acting, so I was out every evening, and I was working during the day, and I was putting stuff together, and my brain just went, no words will go in here. And I'm just sharing that as in, if anyone else ever hits the slump or anyone else feels that month by month, it happens. Sometimes it's that I don't have time to read. I physically do not have the time or the space to cram any more reading in. Sometimes you sit down and you go, no, can't focus. Cannot focus on anything other than maybe what we would call rubbish TV, or something completely inconsequential, or just scrolling on TikTok. Sometimes your brain needs to shut down like that. So that's just a little, if anyone else is feeling that, if anyone gets overwhelmed and you're like, I should be finding joy in reading and yet I just can't, it happens. Give yourself a break. Do not force it. Whatever you read is going to be worth it in the end if you've given your brain time to rest, recuperate, and to be properly ready to absorb whatever you're going to read. I started July on a high because I got to read the advance copy of House of Splinters. House of Splinters by Purcell is set in the same universe as The Silent Companions. The Silent Companions, if you don't know it, is one of my favourite horror books of all time. It's one of my favourite ghost stories. It's one of the spookiest, scariest books I've ever read, and I think it is absolutely brilliant. I've talked about The Silent Companions on this channel many times over. I'm really pleased that so many people have actually gone out and read that book since seeing my reviews and loved it as well. It's a really compelling story, but last year it was announced that a follow-up to The Silent Companions was coming up. At the time it was called a sequel. We knew it was called The House of Splinters, and we would have to wait until October 2025. I put a request in through NetGalley with the publishers, and they sent me the digital copy of House of Splinters so I could bring you a nice early review, and so you can get those pre-orders in if you're able. I was very excited, and I was nervous. I was nervous because The Silent Companions is such a wonderful book. It had such an impact on me. I thought, is anything going to top it? Is she going to try and do the same thing over and over again? Are we going to feel it's a bit tired? Is it going to ruin it for me? But when I received House of Splinters, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, at the setting and the direction it took. So this isn't a sequel to The Silent Companions, though I would suggest you do need to read The Silent Companions to really enjoy this book. The Silent Companions had 2 timelines in it, one set in the 1600s and one set in the 1800s, and the action of The Silent Companions takes place at the Bridge, the seat of the Bainbridge family. House of Splinters takes place in the 1700s, between the 2 stories that take place in the previous book. So it is a standalone story in that respect, but it obviously involves the ghosts, the spectres, the Silent Companions from the first book. In House of Splinters, we follow the story of Belinda Bainbridge. She is married to Wilfrid Bainbridge, and he has inherited the bridge from his deceased father. The story is told from Belinda's perspective mostly, her moving into the bridge as the new lady of the manor. They have a young child, Freddie, and she is expecting their second child. But no sooner have they arrived at the bridge than they start to feel a little bit of discomfort with the area in general. There are problems with the estate and with the surrounding village that Wilfrid is trying to willfully manage. There's some old resentments amongst the villagers and with his family, the way they treated the land, and also some past niggles, maybe some past grievances that took place between the staff and the people of the household that are hinted at and didn't seem to go down very well. One of the crucial features of the bridge that Belinda soon discovers is the presence of the Silent Companions themselves. These life-sized-ish wooden 2D figures. These are panels that are painted with the likenesses of the previous owners and the previous inhabitants of the bridge. And they just stand around and are pretty damn creepy. Anyone who comes into the house and sees them and goes, oh, okay. They were absolutely a real thing. If you Google it, then you can see pictures of silent companions. And they look kind of weird and silly, but definitely unsettling. You wouldn't want to sort of wander into a darkened room and then spot one. The thing is about the silent companions at the bridge, they move. At the bridge, young Freddie senses something very wrong with the silent companions and something wrong with the land in general. He whispers about past tragedies that have taken place, some that he may have heard about from his father, but also stuff that he couldn't possibly know about. And soon very strange things start happening at the bridge, and there is an ominous sense of dread hanging over the family. It is difficult to describe House of Splinters given that it follows on, while not necessarily chronologically, from the previous book. So you're sort of talking about something that you have to assume people's knowledge about if they've read the first book. And if you haven't read the first book, all of this sounds very weird. The main question you have is, does House of Splinters live up to the hype? Is it good? Yes, it is. As a successor to the Silent Companions, it is a worthy one. This is a great Gothic ghost story. Yes, it's in the 1700s. We can creep into the Gothic a little bit there. It channels all of those great vibes of your classic haunted house story. The estate with the young woman, the husband who is playing the classic horror dad, in that I've moved into this house and I'm going to make it all good and we've spent all our money here and I don't care if there's any scary noises over there. We've just got to stay here. No, we're not going to leave. I don't go. Okay, some swords have fallen off the wall and oh, that's not a good sign. But I'm sure it was the wind. Belinda is a good female lead. She is focused on the safety of her children, of her unborn child. She has a companion with her, and there's a really nice dynamic between them. The companion is sort of a friend who has ended up in a servant's role, and it's a nice side story with them in terms of how you treat someone who was never supposed to be a servant as your friend, as a servant. You know, where are the lines drawn there? Belinda is trying to support her husband, but she's also noticing these very frightening things that her son is starting to say. So we've got a creepy kid in the story. He's noticing the silent companions moving. She's noticing them moving. Terrible things are found in the garden pretty quickly. And the action really kicks in very early as well. It's not a slow burn of a story, even though it's beautifully told out in great Gothic detail. It really gets going almost from page one. This isn't just a ghost story though, it is a great Gothic thriller in some respects, because there is a mystery to be solved there. People are still trying to pick apart of what has happened at the bridge, what has happened in Wilfred's family, because there was a tragedy in the past that has sort of been glossed over and not spoken about. And also we have these hints of what went on in the 1600s, what went on in the Silent Companions, the first book, and people trying to decipher a little bit more of that story, a bit more of the story of Hetta. But the rivalry with the estate and the village is really important as well. You've almost got elements of folk horror in here too. I love the direction this book took. I thought we were just getting a standard ghost story, and then there were moments where I actually gasped and went, oh no, oh, the action's really ramping up here. It genuinely gave me everything that I wanted from another book from Laura Purcell. This is a book that is absolutely my cup of tea in terms of a great Gothic ghost story with twists and turns that does hark back to those great Victorian thrillers and those penny dreadfuls. It absolutely delivers. It did the job. It's one of those ones you want to kind of hand over to others and say, well, if you want an example of a good Gothic tale, this is it. There, that format absolutely works. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not necessarily doing anything incredibly inventive or different. It knows what works and it does it so well. I loved House of Splinters and I hope you're going to love it too, because it's out in spooky month, October. So from the highs of House of Splinters, and I was so happy with that, I then hit a run of books in July, which I will go through, and all of these were fine. I just walked away from each of them going, wanted a bit more. My next book was an audio book that I thought was going to be a 4 or 5 star for me, but ended up around about a 3.5. It's She's a Lamb. Now this story has so much going for it and so much to enjoy, but I did have some big questions at the end of it, and I would 100% recommend this book, but I'd love to know if anyone else has read it and had the same misgivings as me, or whether it's just a me problem. She's a Lamb follows the story of Jessamine, a young wannabe actress in Canada. The story is told from Jessamine's perspective, and Jessamine is beautiful, she is gorgeous. She looks the part of an actress, but she's not getting the roles that she thinks she deserves. She's stuck doing boring commercials with an agent who's just shoving her into rubbishy kind of roles. She's working at a local theatre, but there's a new production of The Sound of Music coming up with a local theatre company that are shaky at best, and she is convinced she is supposed to be Maria. We understand from the early pages that Jessamine is delusional and not a particularly nice person at that. She is so convinced of her talent, of her abilities as a musical actress. That's what she wants to be. She has no interest in roles of artistic merit. She's not interested in serious roles. She wants to be Maria, the smiling, shining star on the musical stage. But then she finds out Maria has gone to a rival of hers, but she's called back to the theatre and asked, could she still be part of the production, looking after the Von Trapp actor children behind the scenes. Yeah, that's exactly what she wanted. Jessamine agrees to this, but she is still convinced that the production will end up hiring her. We also get glimpses of Jessamine's private life, the couple of boyfriends at least that she has, who come from very different backgrounds and very different circumstances. Her very strange relationship with her father, and there are hints at something dark having happened in her career in the past. The thing that I really enjoyed about this book, and I think will appeal to so many theatre kids out there, if you were a theatre kid, if you've ever been involved in Amdram, if you love that kind of world, if you love movies like Pearl and Black Swan, the elements of the book that look at the behind the scenes of the theatre world, the bitchiness, the rivalry, absolutely work. They are so enjoyable to listen to. Jessamine is an unreliable narrator. She is unhinged. She gets increasingly unhinged through the book, but we just have her absolutely convinced of her talent and her reactions when she doesn't get her way. We get to see the different people working behind the scenes of this production that just doesn't seem very good at all. Peeking behind the curtain of the theatre world and all these characters who are just unlikable and you love to not like them, that really works in She's a Lamb. And I was so ready to just enjoy that in this book. And yes, Jessamine gets increasingly unbalanced through it, and it builds to quite the climax in the direction it goes in. But there is a reticence that I have about this book, and I have gone back and forth on it many times over. I really struggled with how Jessamine was portrayed in terms of her past. Without giving away spoilers, it's very hard not to, but it is referenced earlier on that there is darkness in her past, and we see again from early on from the relationship she has with her couple of boyfriends that she maintains several relationships, so she's in control of them. These are they're not great relationships, you know, from one extreme to another of just they're not good, they're not healthy. Jessamine is clearly not well in this book. We are really enjoying the fact that she is deluded, that her terrible decisions that she makes in favor of her career, this smiling kind of star, not seeing the world absolutely tumbling around her, and how bad her decisions are. We enjoy that. We enjoy this sort of Schadenfreude of her making these mistakes over and over again. And she's not a likable character. She has some really prejudiced views that are made clear as well. But then we also have the story of her as a victim, which is very dark and very affecting, and I wasn't convinced that enough care had been taken with Jessamine. And it's not that the book was trying to make you feel uncomfortable. I think it probably was, but it wasn't that kind of level of discomfort where I think, oh God, the book achieved what it wanted. I walked away going, I'm not sure what the point you were trying to make with this woman. And too often I find in books these days, it's very easy to throw in really dark stories about women and what they have endured, their past, and too easy to throw that in there as some sort of explanation of why they become unhinged without the due care and thought and process behind what that actually looks like, how impactful that is. This book felt like we had this character who was unhinged, unreliable, unlikable in so many ways. Someone that you look at like through your fingers going, "Arr!" And yes, this person has darkness in their past and it may explain some of their actions, but it felt like that darkness got too much of a central role in this story. You know, it was certainly a supporting player. We saw too much of it, like an explanation, like it was really hammering home a point that didn't need to be made. that sometimes you can just have an enjoyably dark, out of it crazy character, and there isn't a need to give them such baggage to carry all the way through and us to have to carry with it. I don't want that to sound like, I don't care about her past. I don't care about oh, I don't want to care about my characters. I wouldn't have minded caring about her. It was just very hard to feel anything for her. And these scenes felt quite judgmental, weirdly. That's my 2 cents on She's a Lamb. I would love to know if anyone has listened to it. If anyone did have a different take on the action of that book. If you were a theatre kid, there's a lot to love in this book. So do go into it and see what you think. Next, into the realm of popcorn horror that is indulgent, that you just love to sit back and devour. It was the new Delilah S. Dawson book, another arc that I was able to read. It is House of Idyll. And this is where my stutter comes in, because I'm like, it is Idyll, isn't it? This Idyll, this idyllic place. Because some people have been saying Idyll, and I'm like, but it's not, that's... I don't know. I say things wrong constantly. House of Idyll comes out in the autumn. It is the story of Angelina, a down-on-her-luck singer-songwriter, living hand-to-mouth. She's got a shitty job in a diner that she's just been fired from. She is sitting literally on the side of the street thinking about what she's going to do with her life when this beautiful limousine pulls up. And from the limousine, a man offers her an opportunity to be whisked away to a billionaire's artistic retreat so she can work on her music. Sound too good to be true? It absolutely is. The person making this offer, you see, is one of the figures from Angelina's favourite band of all time, one of the most famous bands in the world in this universe, Black Idyll. This rock band, this iconic band that has amassed fans and followers and worship around the world, they have become billionaires because of their clever investments, because of their endorsement deals, and the lead singer, Jesper Idyll, is a god to so many people. And now Angelina is being offered the opportunity to go and live and have her accommodation paid for and have all of her practice time that she wants in the world, food and drink and clothes supplied, in this beautiful, beautiful retreat where she'll actually get to meet her idols. Of course she has questions. I mean, this does sound too good to be true, but they assure her it's all fine, it's no problem, she can walk away if she wants to. But of course she ends up staying. I mean, what else has she got on the outside? And there she stays, and there she starts working on her art. But what is really going on at the House of Idyll? I'm a big fan of Delilah S. Dawson. I find her books incredibly enjoyable. They're indulgent, they're fun, they're punky horror that I absolutely eat up. I loved Bloom. I loved Guillotine. This book is good. It is not my favourite of hers. I enjoyed my time with it. I just went away wanting more. The book is absolutely a page turner because you love being in this ridiculous billionaire's retreat. It's got Eat the Rich vibes to it to a point, and it is very luxurious and indulgent seeing how everyone lives and exists. The rock band that has suddenly taken interest in Angelina, you're seeing this as every teenager's dreams being played out as an adult woman. Oh my god, they've come true. It's got good moments of horror, it's got creepy moments, and yes, we're feeling a few cult-like vibes, maybe. That's the sort of direction you're being pulled down into, but you don't really know where it's going, and I won't tell you. Personally, I think it ended far too abruptly, and we needed more. We just needed more from it. And ultimately you end up going, oh, okay. If you're a fan of Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson, and I loved Bloom, you've got the same sort of setup. Not the plot, but the same structure. Young, wide-eyed woman meets someone, idolizes them, life is perfect, they get swept away into their perfect world, but is there something darker going on underneath? And you're building to that big reveal in the end. But it's much more over the top because you've got a woman in an enormous retreat surrounded by beautiful people and a rock star who's a billionaire. So it is over the top, it is lavish. You have to suspend your disbelief going into this, enjoy it for the ride. It's not the strongest Delilah S. Dawson book while being enjoyable. It needed more to it. But I had fun while I was there. This is your friendly reminder to please like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, so I can keep bringing you my book recommendations, and it also helps this channel to grow. Hit the bell so you can be reminded of my next videos. The next book that I read for my book club, it was Weyward, a book that many of you have recommended when I did a previous video about witchcraft books, a book that is beloved by a lot of people. This, to me, was fine. For those who don't know, Weyward is the story of three different women from three different generations, and their stories entwine. You have Altha in the 1600s, who is about to be accused of witchcraft. You have Violet in 1942, living in the crumbling estate of her family and feeling very trapped and repressed by her father, who thinks only boys should be getting an education and her job is only to go off and get married, but she yearns to have more out of life. And we have a story set in 2019 of Kate, a young woman who is fleeing an incredibly abusive relationship with her husband, and she has fled to a cottage that was owned by a distant aunt of hers, Weyward Cottage. Kate will find her escape at Weyward Cottage, but also find connections to the women of her past and to her own power, something that all Weyward women share. Weyward to me was a book that was more magic realism, more fantastical than it was about witchcraft, the kind of witchcraft that I prefer in novel form. I like my witchcraft quite dark, quite twisting, and I like witchcraft stories about witchcraft itself, whether that is looking at the witch trials, whether it is about the accusations, whether it is about the misconceptions of what witchcraft is. Weyward does channel that a little bit, but this is much more women's fiction about the three women in the story, about finding your power. This absolutely is about magic. Again, less about learning witchcraft, though Altha in the 1600s certainly has, as a former sort of wise woman and learning it from her mother. It's actually more about magic that you are born with and that you have to unlock. It is a lovely story in many respects, and my book club, everyone who read it, they enjoyed it. They really enjoyed it. Some people absolutely loved it, and I've had many people when I've done reviews of it saying, oh my god, I loved Weyward. And I liked it. I wasn't blown away by it. I thought it was absolutely fine. I think it's a story that we've heard many times over. The story of women, quite frankly, having a shitty time, of women being abused, women witnessing abuse, women living in societies or families or units where you are oppressed and repressed and punished for being who you are. It is a story that has been told many times over. This book, even though the subject matter is dark and there are serious trigger warnings in this about, as I've said, about abuse, about assault, it is light. This book is light because it is all about finding the magic and that saving you in the end. I do think the author had taken good care and attention of how to portray people who were in abusive relationships, whether that's familial, whether that's with your partner. It did feel like a lot of care had been taken there, and I really felt that while reading the book, and I so appreciated that. What was also telling, and I will share this in here, and it is a serious point for a moment, you know, the book's subject matter is serious, is how many people on the book club, the women who were online, we were all talking, how many people identified, unfortunately, with Kate's story in the book. How most of the people could say they'd either experienced it or they knew someone very close to them who'd experienced it. And it did give us pause, and we talked about it, you know, openly and very comfortably, just how many people are reading this book going, yeah, been there. I've been there with that sort of person, been there with that sort of environment. And I think Weyward is probably very cathartic. There are a lot of cliches in this book. I'll put it this way. Kate, it's not a revelation. This is not a spoiler. Kate end up going to the cottage, the cute witchy style cottage in the village, living beautifully with animals around it. And she gets a job in the village bookshop. And isn't that every woman's dream? Isn't that what we all want? That's what we all need, is we need to go and live in a cottage and work in a bookshop. And I can't argue with that on a surface level. I will say in that book, I don't know how that bookshop made money. I think that was something we brought up in book club and said it was really cute that you made Kate in this story. She decides to get a job and goes to the local bookshop. That's a bookshop in the middle of nowhere in the village. How is that woman able to hire an assistant? How are they selling books? But you're not asking for those kind of answers. There's plot armor all the way through the book to make it quite cute. Will you learn anything new from this book? I personally don't think so. But I think it's a story that resonates with a lot of people, and they admired the magic behind it, the prettiness, that could come out of the darkness of the story. Weyward is a nice, light introduction to witchy stories if you want something that, yes, has a serious matter, but has a cozy feel to it at the same time. I think that's something that a lot of people will appreciate with Weyward. I enjoyed my time with it. Was it world beating? Did I learn anything new? Honestly, no, but many people will appreciate it. Next up was a book that many people have already put at the top of their lists of the best books of 2025. Best horror books, best historical books. It is a big one. It is Stephen Graham Jones's The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. I got the hard copy of this and listened to the audio, and this is a combo I would absolutely recommend for this book if you are able to. This book has gotten so much praise, and it is worth it. This is not an easy book in many respects. Many people have hit a wall with it. It is a very distinctive writing style, but at its heart is a brilliant piece of historical horror, and one that will unquestionably stay with you. The Buffalo Hunter Hunter has three narratives at its heart. You start off with the narrative of Etsy. Etsy is a researcher. She has discovered this journal that was written by a Lutheran priest named Arthur. And she starts reading through it, and she realizes she is related to this person. She frames the book with her story at the beginning, and we come back to her at the end, and her understanding of her links to the person writing this journal. Then we have the Lutheran pastor's journal itself, him describing his day-to-day life, his serving this community, but also the confession that he has taken by a figure who arrives at his church, a Native American by the name of Goodstab. Goodstab is part of the Blackfeet Nation, arrives in darkness, in dark glasses, wanting to speak to the priest and tell him his story. The narrative then switches between Goodstab's confession each time he comes to see the pastor, and his confession is more of a story and an unveiling of his past and what has happened to him to change him from the man he was to the thing that is sitting in front of the priest now. And then we also have the priest's reflections on the story as it unfolds, and also the priest's observation that bodies are being found in the area, human bodies that have been skinned, and trying to unravel what has happened and marry what he's listening to with this mystery. In the blurb of this book, on the back of the book, or anywhere you'll find online, it refers to the fact that this story is linked to the real case of the Mariah's massacre, in which over 200 Blackfeet were massacred. This is a central part of the story. This is historical fiction telling, really, the American horror story. It is about the crimes that were committed against the Native Americans, the crimes that Goodstab has committed himself, the crimes that linger in the past of everyone in this story. And it's a horror story in your full-on fictional wild ride, oh my god, this is going in places, horror story. As I said, you've got these three different perspectives. You've got Etsy, who bookends the book, and her story is there to open it and to close it. She has very important things to do in the closing of it. It's sort of my least favourite part of the book, but it was still very good. It's really focused on the juxtaposition between the pastor and Goodstab's story. And this story is brutal, it is heartbreaking, it is dramatic, it is thrilling. There are moments of slow burn where you are establishing what is going on, the history, the relationships that are formed. But there's really big moments of action and tension and horror taking place in this book. If you're not familiar with Stephen Graham Jones's work, then you need to know that he does have a distinctive prose, a style of writing. His narrators are not there to simply move the plot along for you, for the author. These narrators, the best way I can describe it, and I found that with his other books as well, they are fully fledged, they are telling their story at their pace and in their own words. And it can sometimes feel a bit jarring, it's a bit strange, because it's not simply prose moving along, let's get to the action, with a few exclamations in there. They are relaying the story in their voice, with all of their prejudices, with all of their thoughts, with all of their preconceived ideas, with their feelings in that moment, it seems, of writing these stories in these journal entries, spilling through. And there are tangents and there are thoughts and there are words used in this that you don't actually understand. There's a huge number of references that Goodstab makes that are words in the Native American or the Blackfeet would use to describe different animals. And you don't know what they are. You're trying to work them out halfway through. There's no key. There's no guide in this book. But it's how he would have spoken. It's how the character speaks. So you go along with the ride for it. Yes, the book takes a minute to get into because of that style, because it feels a little bit jarring in places, and you're really stuck in these people's heads. And the language they use can be archaic, or it can be confusing. But this is where I would absolutely recommend listening to the audiobook as well as having a copy of the hard copy. I know that may be prohibitive for some people, but it so enhanced the experience for me because the audio book, the narration of this was brilliant, was absolutely brilliant. It particularly helped with the Lutheran pastor's journal entries because he does write in quite old-fashioned language. And you really get a sense when you're listening to it, and then you're going back and I would sort of read through the pastor's entries again. I loved the audio narrator of the pastor because you just get a sense of his prejudice, of him being so condescending, so full of himself, so puffed up at the beginning of this book, with these journal entries that are turgid to a point, filled with these sort of observations and these thoughts, things that he absolutely knows about his flock, that he describes his congregation, that he describes the Native Americans, that he describes people around him. And it's so prejudiced. And hearing the audiobook of it, you can sort of hear it through the voice. You can hear how ridiculous it is. You can see all of the flaws in this man's journal entry. But as the story goes on and he starts to gets more visits from Goodstab, who is a terrifying figure to this priest, who comes and is telling him this bizarre horror story more and more, the pastor's language changes from one of condescension, of being above, this man's fairy stories, to real fear, to really feeling frightened and feeling a genuine terror about what Goodstab might know about him. Goodstab relays these stories of death, of survival, of moments of beauty, of moments of love and hope, with such a sort of a matter-of-fact reverence that you do get swept up in it. And there are moments that are so sad in the book, but they aren't dwelt on in a really over sentimental way that it's trying to pouring saccharin and sugar of like, you need to understand how sad this is. It is just laid out as this is what happened. And I can't give away too much in it. Yeah, this is the story of the buffalo, and it's terribly sad in that sense. I will shout out to Stephen Graham Jones. He does give cats a free pass in this book. I'm okay with that. I don't know if anything I have said there is giving you any more indication of whether or not you would want to read this book. I'm only conveying what I felt reading it and why I think it is so good. It is a very powerful story. It has got a good plot, for everything I've said and from what others have said, that, it takes a minute to get into it and just getting used to Stephen Graham Jones's language. But once you do, you have a great historical horror story. There is action in this. There are scary scenes. There is some brilliant cinematic moments in this book where you are, as I was listening and reading at the same time, just like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I think in less skilled hands, a book like this would have been constantly reaching for poignancy, would have been laying out in much more possibly graphic detail and over-the-top detail, how desperately sad and wrong everything that happened was, and sort of forcing you down a sentimental, devastating path. Stephen Graham Jones, with this book, relays an incredibly tragic, sad story, the sad story of the Blackfeet, of the buffalo, of the people in this story, and just leaves it in front of you and delivers it so masterfully that you just end up with this almost bone deep sadness of this resigned realization of the horrors that happened. This book won't be for everyone, but I can recommend the audiobook and the physical copy if you're able to. I think this is an absolute masterpiece. It is a great book. It is difficult and you won't feel brilliant afterwards, but hopefully you'll be glad you read it. And my final book of July, I closed out the month with a little slice of folk horror, a new folk horror story. Well, a story of witchcraft and possession and folk horror thrown in. It's Something in the Walls by Daisy Pierce. Now, I had this audiobook saved pre-ordered. Actually, I'd forgotten I'd done it. And then I was like, oh, great, I can fit this in for July. This is the story of a child psychologist, Mina, newly qualified, who is contacted by a journalist named Sam. They met through a grief support group. Mina, who is getting over still the loss of her brother several years ago. Sam is a journalist and he knows of a story of a young girl, a 13-year-old girl in Cornwall, who is said to be possessed by the ghost of a witch. This possession has ignited interest across her community, her village. Her parents have agreed to an investigation with this journalist, but he needs a child psychologist to come along, and he thinks Mina would be up for the job, even though she's just qualified and she's really not sure of this sort of thing. And they arrive in the village, they meet with Alice, with her parents, and they meet with the different people around who believe either that, yeah, absolutely, she has been possessed by a witch, there is a history of witchcraft in the area, and people who think that she can tell their fortune or that she can help them in some way, people who are amassing a vigil around her house, and others who think she's lying, or others who think that this is just an opportunity to exploit and maybe make some money out of. But what's really going on with Alice? I'll be honest, I nearly DNF'd Something in the Walls, but I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't, and it's rare that this happens. I started off this book and it was giving very much Head Full of Ghosts feel, Paul Tremblay. It was sort of channeling that sort of vibe, a possession story that might all be hokum, parents who aren't very pleasant, you know, these sort of slightly, well, quite caricatured figures in this Cornish community. Cornwall does not do well in this story. It's sort of Cornwall often, this is an aside, but with folk horror, we're like, let's set it in Cornwall. They're all crazy and backward and obsessed with just folk horror and old ways, aren't they? And it's like, oh, Jesus, I think they're quite nice. Anyway, you have this sort of setup of, is Alice telling the truth? Where is this possession story coming from? Alice's father is this horrible, horrible man who just makes just incredibly derogatory comments. Mina, our child psychologist, she's got a bit of a troubled relationship at home. She's quite wide-eyed and wondering. She's not the most effectual at the start main character. She's sort of carrying along and trying to do her job, but being caught up in the horror. Her job is to sort of move the plot along rather than having a lot of agency, really. That's how I felt at the beginning. There were moments of horror. There were scary bits in it, these references to a witch and possible witchcraft, but it was much more about the people, and it was plodding a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, just, okay, we're going to find out, is she making it all up or is it a hoax? But then around about 60% in, the story really ramped up and it became a folk horror story, and it worked. And it suddenly, things were happening. There was a mystery suddenly to be uncovered. There was actually much more going on. And it suddenly jumped up in pace. And I really enjoyed the end of it. I was like, oh, right, okay, good. Stuff was sort of happening at the start. But now, okay. Were the twists and the turns particularly new? No, they were quite good folk horror tropes executed well. But yeah, the action took a good direction. And really quite gruesome scenes near the end of this book. I was sitting listening to I actually wrote down Jesus Christ at one point in my review copy. Like, what? Overall, it does rely on some old sort of possession stories, folk horror tropes. The characters in it, they are broad. Mina does get agency at the end. The supporting character of Sam, the journalist, and also Mina's boyfriend, Oliver, pointless. Not needed in this story. I don't know what they were doing. They were just annoying. And I don't think intentionally annoying, they were just annoying. But the book is saved by good moments of folk horror in the end. I think overall it needed more balance. But yeah, I think I would end up recommending this one for that reason. It's under 300 pages. It was a decent audiobook. If you've read it and you enjoyed it, let me know. There we go. That's every book that I read in July. The 6 books. And I got into some thoughts about those. I appreciate that I've been chatting away about them. 2 great books. One that was just absolutely my cup of tea, enjoyed endlessly. Another which is, I think, a masterpiece, was a difficult read, but well worth the time invested in it. And then some others which were, they were okay. They were okay. So I'm kind of ready for August to blow me away. August needs to step up its game. And August is a good month for me because I'm going to go on holiday, which means I will be just me and some books and a glass of wine. My husband will be there handing me those things regularly. But that means I can get some serious reading done. It's my birthday month, which generally means I pin all of my friends to the ground and say, I can never have enough books. Stop trying to think outside the box and just get me books. That's all I ask for. I do have an Amazon wish list if anyone is desperate to send me anything, but honestly, people do every year ask me, can I send you a birthday present? Please consider giving to charity first. I have charities listed in my link tree, in my bio on TikTok, and I will put them into the description of this video. If anyone has felt that inclination to do something, that's very, very kind of you. Please consider giving to charity first. That's far more important. If you want the wish list, I'll stick it somewhere. You'll have to find it. I've already started a couple of books for August, and I'm already in a very happy place. I'm feeling good about what is ahead. So let me know in the comments, what were your top books of July? Any particular books that blew you away? Have you read any of the books that I have mentioned from this month? And did you have a different reaction to them? Did you have a different interpretation of anything that's going on? Please weigh in. There's no right or wrong way to love a book or to have feelings about it. As long as we're kind in the comments and we're not telling someone they're wrong for whatever they feel about it, how we interpret things is up to us. So would love to have your feedback. Let me know any books that you're planning to read for August, and also let me know anything you would like to see from me in the coming weeks, as I've got to plan a lot of stuff in advance before I get on a plane and lie by a pool. And don't forget, I always need more recommendations for summer horror, and spooky season is coming up, so we've got to start planning for that pretty soon. Stay spooky, bye-bye.